I'm the Deputy Executive Director of the UNESCO-MOST Bridges Global Coalition, which is the only humanities-informed sustainability science program in the family of UN organizations. And Bridges has co-created this event in partnership with two Welsh charities, Cegin y Bobl and Cegin Hedyn. Cegin is a Welsh word that means kitchen. I'm assuming we have an international audience here. So one of them means people's kitchen, and the other I've translated as seed kitchen, but I'm sure someone could put me right if I've got that wrong. I'm going to take a few minutes to quickly contextualize this discussion for you. And yeah, first of all, I suppose the main thing to do is to say thank you to everyone for being here. So Occam's razor is a philosophical principle that states the simplest solutions are almost always the best. And the panel that we've got today proposes that learning to cook is a simple solution for addressing some of today's most pressing problems. I believe it can revolutionize one's life, moving from dependence to empowerment, from taking to giving, towards nourishing and caring for others, including changing relationships with the environment. Adding cooking into the curriculum provides a raft of really important skills, much more than simply producing meals. And in concert with our theme, I've decided to use the circular motion of stirring to set the scene. I think it's better than the rather aggressive and fashionable provocation because it suggests both new beginnings and the mixing of ideas rather than being goaded. As an action, it reminded me of the work of our panel, but also of the philosopher and psychologist Bayo Akamolafe, who uses circling ant behavior to illustrate the current global predicament. As the slide shows, ants can sometimes circle. When a leader ant gets lost, it begins circling to try and find the path, causing all the others to follow, creating an endless loop, a death spiral, if you will, which is very hard to escape from, as ants continue to follow each other blindly, eventually dying of exhaustion without making progress. Only extreme weather events or an infection can disrupt the pattern. The metaphor is obvious. Blindly following without question takes you nowhere. The inability to break free, innovate, or change direction when everyone else is stuck in the same pattern means you'll suffer the same fate. Our panel is made up of people who've broken the spell of that spiral and are creating a gentle revolution through a change in direction. So let me first introduce our speakers, all of whom work in Wales, a country leading the world in its focus on sustainable futures. And then I'll outline the format of the session. So first of all, let me introduce you to Simon Wright, a restaurateur, food writer, and consultant with a special interest in local food and sustainability. He was the consultant on Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares for Europe and the UK for about 10 years and founded a cafe restaurant food shop called Wright's Emporium with his wife. That's featured in the UK's Top 100 Restaurant Awards and is named one of the 40 best places to eat in the UK. He's a co-founder of Cegin y Bobl, The People's Kitchen, a not-for-profit organisation that delivers immersive food literacy workshops for everyone. And now let me introduce you to Barney. Maybe you could wave, you people I'm introducing, there you go. Barney believes that food education should be playing a central role in health and education policy, both at the local and the national government level. Why not international? Come on, let's say international too. His Square Food Foundation has worked since the 1990s, providing free cooking courses in Bristol, England, to those deprived or marginalised. Their aim, so Square Foundation, is to teach people how to cook healthy food from scratch and to improve their health, reduce hunger, and bring joy and confidence to communities. He received an MBE from the Queen for feeding thousands during the pandemic. Moving on now to Carwyn, who will wave at you. Carwyn is the best-selling author of the books you can see on the slide, Apples of Wales, Welsh Food Stories, and Tir, the story of the Welsh landscape, which has built him a very well-deserved reputation as a leading voice in Welsh food history, culture, and policy. He regularly broadcasts, including with the BBC's food programme on Radio 4. Carwyn is also a co-founder of Cegin y Bobl. And our last panelist is Derry, who is passionate about creating thank you for waving, Derry, well done, for creating a better food system. He's the founder of The Warren and Cegin Hedyn, a unique combination of kitchen and growing gardens that operates as a pay what you can cafe. This initiative earned him BBC Food and Farming's Community Food Champion Award last year, and with additional accolades like Sustainable Chef of the Year in 2019, Derry's work reflects his commitment to fostering inclusivity, community resilience, and a healthier planet. So we've got a fantastic group of people today to talk to you. Let me now very briefly give you a sense of the structure of this webinar then. For the main course, we're going to have a series of short presentations, one from each, and I don't know who's first or in what order. That's up to you, Simon, to organise. Then following those brief presentations, there are going to be 3 15-minute question and answer sessions organised around those 3 points that you can see on the slide there. Firstly, the problem, our relationships with food. Secondly, solutions. Do we have the answers? And thirdly, the role of community. Okay, so over to you, Simon.
Hi, thanks very much, Lucy. You introduced me already, but my name's Simon Wright, and I've run restaurants for 35 years in Wales, and also had a sort of sideline in a bit of broadcasting, food writing. I've worked as a food critic. I did work on Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares for 10 years as the restaurant consultant as well. So, you know, I've had what you might laughingly call a career in food. So it's been my life, certainly, for my working life. And throughout that time, whatever else I've been doing and running restaurants and, as I say, a bit of broadcasting, etc., I've always been concerned about the politics of food. And largely that's manifested itself in work that I've done with government at various levels, local government, Welsh government, UK government, excuse me, over the past couple of decades. But I guess increasingly I started to feel that government wasn't going to address the challenges that we have in the food system with the urgency that is needed. And certainly in the past 4 or 5 years, a lot more of my energy has gone into working with other people like those that you see here to actually try and make a difference on the ground, and in making that difference to prove and to show that there are solutions to the issues that we encounter in food, and we'll go on to talk about those, I know, and that a lot of them are rooted in our communities and with working with our communities and enabling our communities. You know, I come from a hospitality background, so I come from the world of chefs and restaurateurs and small independent food producers, etc. Those are the people that I deal with on a daily basis, and I had a sort of feeling a few years ago that there was an awful lot of ideas and ambition, and certainly a passion about wanting everybody to have good food in that community, and that the looming crises that we're facing in terms of health, the effect of food production on the environment, etc., was of great concern to that community in Wales and beyond. And I think we've seen how independent hospitality worldwide has become involved with the community on various, various projects. Chef Jose Andre, who's just been sacked by Donald Trump, I think, has done all sorts of things around the world, and we've seen those initiatives elsewhere as well. So it's not new, but what struck me was that we had this incredible infrastructure of those people across Wales, and that, in my view, they were the ideal people to be intervening and making a connection with the community to change things on the ground and see what we could achieve together. And that's really where the idea of what was originally called Cook 24, I won't go into the reasons why, but it's now becoming Cegin y Bobl, the not-for-profit, and the work that it was doing. And I'm going to start off by, or at this point, show you a short film on that, which will give you an idea of what it's about. I'll say a few words more about it afterwards, and then we'll move on to the other speakers. But Carwyn, you have the controls over this, I believe. I hope.
Okay, yeah, coming up, I hope too. Just... So if I share my screen, this one.
There you go.
Okay. If you can't hear sound, can somebody put, shout out or something?
You've only got to turn on the news to realise the massive challenges that we face in Wales in the way that we feed ourselves. Increasingly, we're seeing inequality of diet leading to inequality of health outcomes, and moreover, just a strain on the NHS from diet-related disease.
That's why we're launching Cegin y Bobl, the People's Kitchen.
So that nature, the economy, and our health all get joined together. Food as a solution rather than this huge problem.
Having now worked in both the food bank and schools, I think the ultra-processed food is out of control now. We're pretty much the only species who are killing ourselves with what we eat.
We have some children who worry about trying new foods. We have some children who have lived on basically packet foods, sort of hot noodles and things like that, so haven't got the experience to be able to tell you what food is like.
So the current position isn't working for anybody, and we desperately need to do something about that.
What we want to do is use the passion and the skills that cooks and chefs have got in every community to transform our relationship with food.
It's about bringing the fun back into the kitchen and bringing some basic skills to give people the confidence and empower people to go away and cook for themselves.
Cook 24 is run by Coleg Sirgar through the Shared Prosperity Fund, but comes to an end in December 2024. It's so important that Cegin y Bobl carries on the legacy of Cook 24's work.
This is why we need to raise around £250,000 by the end of this year in order to keep this amazing work going and not to lose the momentum that's already been established.
I just want to say thank you to you for teaching me all of this. Thank you!
This is really about empowering people. This is about making a difference on the ground. If 1,000 people gave £250, but anything helps, a tenner, do you know, people, can you give? It'll make a huge difference to the future of food, farming, and indeed the economy in Wales. Please get behind this.
Thanks, Carwyn. Yeah, as you can see, that was a fundraising video. I'm not expecting you, but actually feel free, of course, if you want to donate. But no, I mean, that's a fundraising video, and it was aimed at explaining the work that we've done over the past couple of years and what we intend to do going forward. Just to say a little bit more about that work. The two main efforts that we've made have been in primary schools and in the community. What we were kind of determined to do from the outset, because we knew that the funding for this was not going to go on forever in its current form, and that we'd have to establish a certain amount of momentum and also a certain amount of evidence that this could work at scale. So we took the decision to do the work quite intensively, particularly in schools. And the majority of what we've been in quite a lot of schools, but there have been two schools in which we have done two primary schools in which we've done the majority of the children. So these would be children aged between 6 and 11. And what we did with those was take them on 6-week courses, half a class in the morning, half a class in the afternoon, so only half a day a week, with our chefs, and on a journey to explore their relationship with food and rebuild their relationship with food, or actually to build a new relationship with food. I think it's worth saying that the approach that we've taken has not been, and this is quite, we'll talk, I mean, hopefully we can talk about this during the questions, but this has not been an approach of telling people how to eat. What fundamentally underlies our approach is that, look, you know, we've been doing that for years. It doesn't work. Nestle, for instance, have a marketing budget of £11 billion. So they spend in 3 days what we spend in the UK on trying to counter obesity. So that's not a battle that you want to be taking on. And anyway, and for reasons that we'll go into, and that I think are particularly relevant here because they're about connection and culture, it's not the same relationship with food as the one that we're offering. Now, this actually helps us because what we do is we get the kids to park their existing eating habits. We ask them what they eat, but we don't give them a hard time about it. And then we basically say, look, we're going to go on this journey over here, which is very interesting and intriguing and creative. We're going to give you sharp knives and some heat. So there's an awful lot of responsibility involved. We give them the respect that they will be able to do those things safely. And, you know, the results that we get in a 6-week period, I have to say, are way beyond our expectations. There really is a situation where a lot of kids are very limited in what they will eat at the outset, and by the end of it are on a completely different menu. So that's absolutely crucial to what we do. And we do a similar sort of thing in the community as well, particularly at food banks, where we've had similar levels of success in helping people be more creative and resilient in their approach to feeding themselves. And you know, those programs have been going on for the last sort of 18 months, and we're persisting with those now. We have funding challenges, but we're sort of you know, we have hope and we have some promises of funding further down the line. I think that's really all I wanted to say at this point, because we're going to move on to Barney, who's going to talk about one of the specific prongs that we have in our approach, which is we do this intensive work with the kids and in food banks, but it's not just about that. We have to leave a legacy, and it has to be about the long term. So Barney's going to talk a little bit about food leadership and teaching the teachers. Over to you, Barney. You're muted.
Is that it? Am I good? All good? Yeah.
Yeah, all good.
Yeah,
all good.
All good. Sorry. Okay, beg your pardon. So I'll be really brief. It's interesting, having just come out of a primary school where I've been in conversation with some school cooks about reviewing the current offering, the current school meal offering, and looking at what a sustainable meal might look like within the context of that primary school. It's got 400 kids, got 6 or 7 people, cooks in the kitchen. We watched the service and everything else. There was the most abysmal, I'm not going to beat about the bush, meal offering of some awful chicken pancake nugget thing, that and along with a lot of other things. And the point is that there's the will within that school. You could feel it in the kitchen and in the deputy head whom we were speaking to see change. But for that to happen, as well as what Simon was describing and what's clearly identifiable in that video, the Cegin y Bobl video, is some kind of leadership within these institutions. So the leadership programs that Cegin y Bobl is offering, that Simon alluded to, are programs, but they could also just be seminars or a one-day workshop, are really about having conversations. That's the first thing. And they are for organizations, businesses, public health institutions, communities, you could say local government, pretty well any group, institution could benefit from what we are calling food leadership. But we're focusing on, particularly on schools, to enable the teachers, cooks, children and parents to see their school community as something that could take a leading role in the sustainable food revolution. So that's kind of who we're aiming at. But what I would say is it's about mindset within the context of your workplace. So if in the case of a teacher, it's clear what that is. It's moving away from accepting perhaps the status quo. It's about capacity, the capacity to understand the terms that are bandied about in the world of food and health particularly. But I also would say that it's a social, political form of activism. As far as I'm concerned, food leadership is putting people in a position where they're challenging industrial imperialism, you could say. They're challenging perhaps the education system. They're challenging public health priorities. And in a way, it's in the context of what I see as a system we've lived in for a couple of hundred years, kind of coming to an end. I'm very optimistic about this. I think Trump is the trumpet of industrialized world's doom. I'd like to think he's the beginning of the end. But I mean, in a very specific context, food leadership is inspiring people. I think we use that word a lot. Words like passionate, inspired, and so on are used a lot, but I think it's really true of what needs to happen in the context of a food leadership program, is that people begin to feel themselves empowered to think independently, to think on behalf of others. It's enabling people to imagine other possibilities than the ones that they were considering. It's also about helping people to identify a common purpose, and in this case, it's really clear. We've got to change the food system. We need to scale up the movement, and that needs to involve many, many more people. And we know we're not getting anything from the top, except in very small ways. And I think it's about the air we breathe. It's about wealth redistribution. It's way beyond just cooking skills, which I see as the sort of medium. It really is understanding the principles and the contradictions and the complexities of the food system through having a lot of really interesting, very much food based, in other words, cooking. Everybody's cooking together. That's the most important thing, that it is about actually doing cooking or being out on the land and doing some gardening or being with some cows or whatever it is that's part of the food system. And so we've done some with teachers, haven't we, Simon? And they have been unbelievably successful, I would say, without doubt. They've left, you could say, sadder and wiser in a way, in the sense that, it's a challenge. They're faced with a big challenge. It's not going to be easy. And this is the feeling that I left with this afternoon when I was in the school. They're up against it. But we know that we can make it work. We know we can create the kind of mindset shift within the sort of groups that we're working with. So it's a really exciting project, I think, within the Cegin y Bobl bigger picture. So that's it from me.
Thanks, Barney. Yeah, that was great. I think it's You're right. I mean, I was at a primary school day before yesterday, where both of the teachers that I was seeing there were running cooking classes, food-based stuff, based after having gone through your food leadership course, and it was great to see that, and how inspired they were. I think one of the things that we really notice with this is that there's a sort of general awareness that food is a problem in schools. And it's a problem also that manifests itself in children's behavior and attention span, etc. It does incorporate the very feeble nature of school lunches. But it's through these food leadership classes that I think that what we see with the teachers and classroom assistants that come to them is that an understanding that it's not, that the status quo is not acceptable, and they want and can do something about it. So they go back charged up, I think, and empowered in that respect. But we very much have a three-pronged approach, which is to do in schools, which is to do the intensive work with the kids. You have to do that. You've got to change the food culture with the kids. But then you want to continue it through the food leadership so that it's embedded in the school. And then the third element is you have to have decent school lunches. But we would argue that you can only get to the school lunch stage when you've done the other bits, because you've got to change the food culture first before you can change the lunches. Otherwise, you're just imposing it on the kids. And that ends up in all sorts of tears, as Jamie Oliver discovered. So Carwyn is going to say a little bit now on language and culture. Carwyn is a founder of Cegin and Bobl. We've worked closely together for about 3 years now. Carwyn brings an amazing amount of experience and talent to the picture, not least because his understanding of food culture in Wales and history is unparalleled, I think. So, Carwyn.
Thank you, Simon. Obviously, I don't know exactly where in the world you all are listening, and people listening to the recording as well. But I want to just, in the few minutes I've got, speak to this with two lenses on. One of them is this question of the curriculum, and building on what Simon and Barney have been saying, why is the curriculum so important to this whole conversation? But secondly, also the question of Wales. Why are we speaking to you from Wales, and how does that map onto other contexts globally? So I'm going to start with Wales, and hopefully it'll become clear why as I go through. So I'm just going to share a few slides. Hopefully you can see those slides, and I'm going to put them into full screen mode. So there's a silly little map. So to the right of that map is England, and then just over the sea, I should have put it on the map, is Ireland. So Wales is that bit of the world halfway between England and Ireland. That's how to understand Wales. These are my books, they've already been shown. And look, what better way into any country than thinking about the national dish? Now, let's not get into academic debates about that whole concept, but for what it's worth, a dish called cawl in Welsh is our national dish. There's a few things to say here. So in Wales, for those of you who don't know, we have a native language. It happens to be my first language that I speak at home with my kids and family and so on and so forth. It's not everybody's first language. There's a whole history to that to do with colonialism and a whole variety of things. But it's relevant, and you can apply that to your own contexts. And the national dish, there is no English word for it. So people who don't speak Welsh in Wales still call it cawl. It's its name. That's maybe significant. We'll come back to that. What does it mean? Well, it basically, I'm going to make it sound boring, but a Welsh lamb and leek stew. Requisite pictures of a native Welsh breed of sheep, very hardy, and leeks that survive the winter here. That's great. And a couple of other things in terms of Wales and cawl as a kind of entryway. I want to say, I've said we have a native language. I haven't said, but it's important to note that Wales was the first industrialized society worldwide. So that's using the definition where fewer than 50% of the workforce are engaged in agricultural subsistence. If you use that measure, Wales got there in the 1840s. A fair way before any other society. That's relevant because we seem to have also become the first post-industrial society as well. So sometimes we seem to just be very accidentally ahead of the curve, for better and for worse. And as I've kind of already alluded to with this language thing, do read between the lines there. We do have some rather strange, and I'm allowed to say that because I come from it, some rather strange survivors of very conservative, traditional, peasant, quote unquote, traditions right next to the centre of the British Empire. There's a lot of complexity there. This is not the time to go into that. Some of these facts about Wales are also true in different ways about many other parts of the world. We have much in common with friends in many other parts, although obviously many differences as well. But I wanted to tell you those things because I want you to bear them in mind as we think about this dish, cawl. In the native language, poetry is important. If you know a little bit more about Wales, you know that we have an annual festival of poetry and music and culture called the Eisteddfod, and we put crowns on chief bards' heads. And these are big things, you know, over 100,000 people attend every year in a small country. That's a lot of the population. Poetry is important, and it's not just something that people in ivory towers do in this society. My daughter, I have a 7-year-old daughter. When she was born, a friend of ours who nobody has ever heard of, but writes traditional strict meter poetry, wrote a poem to celebrate her birth. That's normal. When my grandfather turned 80, we did the same thing to celebrate his birthday. Sometimes they're crap, sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're actually quite profound. Cawl has got many, many poems to it, and this is just one, a fairly recent one. I'm going to read it out to you, even though I realise you probably don't speak Welsh, because I want you to listen to the sound. It's in a traditional strict meter poetry, the origins of which lie in the 5th and 6th centuries AD, this poetic form, this meter. Berwa dy gig y bore, yna dod dy datws a thlysiau, toc o fara gydag e, a chaws, beth mwy chi eisiau. If you have a good ear, you'll have heard not only is there a rhyme, which many, many languages use in poetry, but there's also actually a very strict system of not just the beat and the rhythm, but also consonants, not just alliterating, but being echoed across the line. Look it up, it's called Cynghanedd. That doesn't really matter, apart from the fact that we have a poem here, far from unique, to a dish, written in Cynghanedd, that's part of a social structure that has been threatened for hundreds of years. We could talk about other dishes. This is a wet, this is a northerly part of northwestern Europe. And so these dishes naturally reflect not exclusively though, I wouldn't want to overemphasize this, but they do naturally reflect the sorts of things that grow well here. So cerch is oats, and until 30, 40 years ago, there were still people tended to be up in the hills and mountains who produced a wide range of traditional dishes using oats. In this picture, you've got porridge, of course, of which there are many variants, served with honey traditionally, summer fruits, many other things, but also oat bread. You might call it oat cakes in English, but flat oat cakes, not dissimilar in some ways to dishes from Ethiopia, up in the mountains there. A fermented oats dish on the left here with the lady preparing it. There's much I could say about this. Cheese as well. This is a friend of ours at their farm where they produce a traditional cheese made into a dish that became called in English Welsh rarebit. The Welsh name Caws Bobi does not mean Welsh rarebit, it simply means roast cheese. There's the inside and the outside view, obviously a very common thing in terms of food and culture and how they're understood historically and today across the world. There's a whole history there. I'm making allusions and I'm inviting you to reflect on what the greater significance of these things are. Cockles as well. I'm giving some of you a flavour who may not know anything about this bit of the world, but a seafood traditional. I could buy it in the corner shop near where I live. The reason the corner shop sells it is tends to be older, so people over 60 years of age, working class generally, who will eat this, not necessarily every day, but maybe every week or every 2 weeks as part of their foodways. Anybody my age, I'm in my 30s, very, very few of us eat cockles in this country today. There are underlying dynamics here, aren't there, that translate into many other contexts worldwide. And that's why I wanted to draw your attention to them. And coming to circle back to that curriculum thing I said at the beginning, and hopefully join dots with what Simon and Barney were saying, food as a social phenomenon, as something to do with public health, to do with the economy, so, you know, many of these other considerations, in many Western contexts, not everywhere, but also many other global contexts too, I should say, gets put into a certain box. It's what we do at lunchtime, or it's what we do when we go out for breakfast in many parts of the world, or eat at home, you know, whatever. But there's not much of a link between food in many cultures. I appreciate this isn't true everywhere, but there's not many links between food and the traditional academic disciplines. That does a disservice to how we are as people. Actually, generally speaking, huge generalization here, but generally speaking, you know, food is one of the primary ways that we as people, through our cultures, interact with each other and with the planet around us. You know, the truism, we are what we eat. And that gets encoded in culture, has been encoded in so many different ways across many different cultures. And I hope you can even just guess from my few slides there about the important ways in our context here in Wales, we can work with kids and with teachers to actually say, well, there's more to this than just healthy eating. There's a lot more to this than just sustainability. There's a way here to access stories, ancestral stories, old stories, a way to access stories with, you know, another thing I didn't mention is tea. My wife brought me a cup of tea as I was speaking. Lovely of her. Tea has been drunk here for hundreds of years. That's a link between us here in Wales through colonialism with peoples who were exploited and colonized in Southeast Asia in particular. So, you know, that's an important other story that our kids in schools need to learn. And these are ways of connection. That's how I'd sum this up. If you don't remember anything else from what I say, please remember this. When you're thinking about food and the curriculum, dwell on that word connection and the way that food can serve as a way into connection. And I mean, and I'm going to shut up now, but I mean through music and literature and film and drama, but I also mean through science and geography and history and maths, and in fact, the whole curriculum. So hopefully that's enough of a provocation, to use that word, for me to shut up, having made my point.
Great stuff, man. Thank you, Colin. Really interesting about Cowl, actually. I got a message from a parent of one of the kids from our local school who'd done some work with Cegin and Bobl yesterday, to say that Davey and his 10-year-old mates that he has in a band, and they're a proper band. They've got, you know, they're playing bass, guitar, drums, keyboards, etc. Had written a song about the cowl at their school. So it just, again, Cohen, reflects what you were saying about how good it was as well. They're very lucky there. They have a sort of more enterprising and very enthusiastic school cook, and very good it is too. The song, the cowl, I haven't tried. Derry, brilliant to have you here. Derry has done extraordinary things over the years in Wales, in Carmarthenshire in particular, both with his hospitality offerings, which have been based on a whole set of principles that many of us would adhere to around sustainability, inclusivity, etc. And in the past few years has embarked on this incredible project, Cegin Hedyn, which is you know, a pay as you can community restaurant. It took an awful lot of effort to get these things off the ground. Derry has an awful lot of energy and enthusiasm, and he's been an inspiration and an example to others, I think, in Carmarthenshire and Wales. So there you go, Derry. I picked you up. Show us your film. Tell us about it.
Thank you. I don't think I could have introduced myself better than that. So, there's so much to say, but I kind of want to just talk about how Cegin Hedyn came about and why I decided to do it. And it came post-COVID, when the realization that some of my friends, close friends, people I really cared for, were not able to afford to come and eat the food that we were serving in the restaurant. And I opened the Warren because I wanted to serve my community good, healthy food. And I didn't ever think that it would get to a point where they wouldn't be able to afford to come in and even have a soup. And so it really hit me hard. And I thought the model of pay what you can is just something that I've been seeing for years and years and years, and ringing alarm bells. And I thought I was setting up a community project with this restaurant, but really it's kind of just more and more I do this, I realize that it's just creating a larger divide to the people who can afford to eat this wonderful, organic, local, seasonal food, and the people that can go nowhere near this kind of food. So something really had to be done. And I knew that there were lots of empty kitchens after COVID, and I contacted the kitchen. I mean, you can see it through this back window. I contacted the church kitchen, and it's empty, and their community cafe had been shut for, well, since COVID, and with no plans to reopen. So they basically gave me the opportunity to go in there and take over the kitchen and start a project. They paid it forward by giving it rent free for me for the first probably 6 months. I paid my time forward. I used lots of equipment, like all the stuff that you see behind me that we all our restaurateurs build up over the years, and just started cooking, started showing up. People started showing up, and simple food, but the same ethos as the Warren of local, seasonal, organic food. And it's really given me a new lease of life to keep on in this trade, which is just incredibly difficult right now. And I can just see it getting harder and harder and harder. But these two projects together, there's one that's incredibly difficult, and then the other one is incredibly nourishing, but they both help each other somehow. I don't know how they help each other, but they are helping each other. People who can afford to come into the restaurant, they are paying forward, and that's supporting the community kitchen. And then some of my customers are going to the community kitchen, and people in the community kitchen are coming to us, and it's all working. The BBC did a fantastic documentary, which they have given me, which I'm not allowed to share online, but I can do it in this context. So I'm going to show you this video. It's about 6 minutes, but they really do give you an idea of how the Warren and Cegin Hedyn provides a real magical project in Carmarthen. So I'm going to share my screen with you now. Hopefully it works. Include sound, yes. Screen, yes. Come on.
Jerry, I suggest that you enlarge the picture because we can see ourselves as well.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so this version is choosing not to want to play to you. So I have a different version, which is fine. It'll just take me 2 seconds. Technology.
I want to introduce you to a very special group of people. They're in Carmarthen. They're called Cegin Hedyn, and they're led up by the remarkable Derry Reed. Have a look at this. Food's a funny thing, isn't it? I mean, typically we eat 3 meals a day, and yet the right meal with the right people can change the way we feel about almost everything. The Morning Live Community Food Champion Award celebrates, well, just that. I'm travelling the UK to meet the nominees, and today I'm in Carmarthen to meet award-winning chef Derry Reid. Hey, Derry.
Hello.
How are you, mate? Nice to meet you. He runs one of the top restaurants in Wales, but 2 years ago decided to do something for the area in which he lives and set up Cegin Hedyn, a community kitchen and canteen.
Cegin Hedyn translates into the seed kitchen.
A volunteer-run allotment and kitchen, Cegin Hedyn opens its doors twice a week and operates a pay-what-you-can policy.
Anyone from any walk of life can come in here and they can have food, whether they can afford to have it or not. And we trust that people who have got money will pay for it, and people who don't have the money, they don't need to pay for it, and that's okay, and there's no questions that need to be asked about that.
The menu at Cegin Hedyn is a celebration of local, seasonal and organic produce, some of which is grown in their community allotment, but not without help.
This is a squash plant that one of the other allotment holders donated to us. We planted it here about 2 months ago, and it is literally just
taken over. We'll bring in the forklift. There we go. I'll get it. Right. Oh, yeah, that's all right. I can handle that. Look at that bad boy. So what proportion of what you put on plates there do you hope to get from this plot here?
To feed the amount of people we're feeding, we would need a much bigger growing operation, but that might come. This is the thing with community. There are people out there, and it's about connecting those people together. We've had people that helped us build the polytunnel and the shed. The people that are donating these fruit and vegetables from their plots. It's just starting something pretty special. Here, there's some raspberries.
You've got some raspberries. Look at that.
Yeah.
That's the king.
I think that one needs to be eaten. You pick 2, eat 1.
If you say so. You're the boss. I'm not going to argue. Oh my! Oh, it's so sweet. Is this all part of what makes the magic happen?
Yeah, definitely. Like, you can't buy this anywhere. We grow it, we make it, and it's what brings a big smile to my face when I come into the kitchen, bringing produce from here that we've grown together.
Today, Mike from the plot next door has some tomatoes to donate. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
They're full of Welsh sunshine. With a full-time job in his own restaurant,
Service, please.
Derry relies on a small army of volunteers, not only on the allotment, but also in the kitchen, where head chef Samantha is cooking a curry with the donated squash from the plot.
There's turmeric, yes, we've got coriander and cumin.
Okay, so classic sort of curry combination.
Here we go. We cook everything from scratch. This is amazing produce that some people have picked it this morning, and so people are getting fantastic food here.
The thing I love about this place, they're not just feeding the stomach, feeding the soul. But Cegin Hedyn is just as much about building a strong community as the food itself. Joe and Sue are long-term volunteers here.
It's feeling you're contributing to the community. It's a great feeling. Yeah, you get a lot out of it yourself. And so it's really nice to sort of get involved in something so that's sociable once a week as well.
When you dish up the food and you hand it over to them, they're so grateful. And we also say to them, if you'd like some more, please come back. And they just say, really? So yeah, you know, if you want to take some home, you just say, have a freezer. We've got frozen food in there. You can take home and cook, or we can pack something up that you can eat it later on today.
There's just time for a few quick words from Derry before the doors open.
So we have a very busy service coming up. I wish everyone luck and just have a fantastic time. Good luck.
70 are expected today. Go team, go team. That is sauerkraut. Okay. So that's pickled cabbage.
Yeah.
Do you get the feeling that that kind of, I suppose, kindness doesn't happen to them very often in their lives?
Yeah, that's sad. It moves us sometimes. You know, we go behind the scenes and, oh, you know. Yeah, it does. It brings a tear to your eye.
It's getting very busy, but luckily we've got a crack team on today. Single dad James is a regular customer at the canteen.
You hear the joy here, and you know, people bring their sorrows here as well. Nobody's going to judge you. Definitely kindness in the air. You can see the food is it is made with love, you know.
And the food tastes amazing.
Yeah, the food does taste amazing.
James has PTSD. He's unable to work due to his health, and money for food is tight.
Where do you source your food from, typically?
Various food banks and charities. So, for example, the Salvation Army. I'm one of many millions of people that happen to come to places like this, not just through choice, but through need. But I'll tell you what, when I'm in a situation where I'm stronger, they're going to get a lot of meals back from me, let's put it that way, many times over.
What you're talking about is like a long-term commitment to this community as well.
Yeah.
So that you won't forget what you've been given.
No, never forget. No, you don't.
Lunch service is in full swing, and the place is full of happy punters. But it's not just the food drawing people in.
Obviously meeting people here, and then you see them outside in the wider community, and there's connection. So I saw you at Cegin Hedyn.
Do struggle with loneliness. So yeah, being part of a sort of vibrant community and meeting different people, and seeing different faces and hearing different voices is really important to me.
I'm pretty skint most of the time. From this place I got a cheap meal and I got to talk to people because I live on my own. It's also more than just having a meal.
I call it magical energy. A lot of smiles, a lot of love, a lot of support, lots of people, sharing, chatting, caring, and yeah, it's great.
Wow, Cegin Hedyn, what an amazing project and what an amazing vision. You got a feeling that the ripples from this project could spread way beyond Carmarthen.
That's it, guys.
Great stuff. Thank you, Derry. There's a lot of things that come out of that. I think that you know, pertinent to the discussion that we're hopefully going to have going ahead. We've got sort of 3 topics that we've sort of outlined to discuss with, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes on each. Me and Carwyn and Derry are available for questions, but if we can make it into a nice collaborative discussion, that would be great. Barney's had to go because he's got to get a train. But the first, the area that we identified to talk about really was a very obvious one, which is what is the problem with our relationship with food? This is something that, you know, we're very used at the moment to going into meetings with government, potential funders, etc., where we have to talk about the crisis in food because it's the underpinning of us wanting to take the action that we are. But it's really not hard to discern the headline issues around food because you only have to turn on the television or, you know, look at any media, really, any news media, and almost on a daily basis, food is in the headlines in some way, particularly in relationship to health. I mean, this is a global phenomenon, but just to give you the situation in Wales is that we head up quite a lot of the league tables for diet-related disease. I mean, a small country like ours, and we spend £500 million a year. Remember, there are only 3 million of us. £500 million a year alone treating preventable type 2 diabetes. So that's 130 quid for every man, woman and child in Wales every year, just treating one diet-related disease. So the health equation, as we know, is increasingly that diet inequality leads to health inequality. And that is all heading in the wrong direction at the moment. We've talked a little bit so far about the...
Simon, I'm just going to interrupt you. Derry, can you stop sharing so that we can spotlight you and Carwyn? There you go. Okay. Brilliant. Thank you.
I've completely lost my train now. Where was I? So climate and nature. Well, we know that the current food system globally is the biggest destroyer of nature, and that around about 2030, food production will become the biggest cause of climate emissions, overtaking things like transport, energy, etc., etc. So it has a huge impact there. And then, of course, we have issues around economy, rural economy, particularly in Wales, where we realise very little of the value of the produce that we do actually grow and cultivate in Wales. And then there's the issue of food security, where the UK produces about 60% of the calories that it needs, which places it in a very precarious position as far as global conflict is concerned and other disruptions to the global supply chain like climate. I could go on, but those are some of the really, really big issues. But I think what's interesting, in Derry's film, in his presentation, is that we would say it goes way beyond that in terms of disenfranchisement as well. And I think this is particularly relevant to this group and has already been touched on, particularly in Derry's video, which is everything that goes around food. Our spiritual relationship with food, a relationship through evolution with food, how it makes us feel, its role in the community, our needs around food from a mental health perspective, etc., etc. For us, that's as big a part of the picture as anything else. And the dysfunctional nature and the fact that relationship with food is broken for many people, I think should be great concern to us in all those respects. We're available for questions on that kind of subject. What are the issues and what is it that we're trying to address?
And can I, just while I'm sort of filling in now, because we're waiting for questions to come in. So get your questions ready while I just burble for a little bit, people. So these questions can be addressed to the three people who are being spotlit at the moment, together, collectively, or individually. But also, it might be a good idea to focus a bit more attention on the curriculum and how that should be developed. So I'm just sort of nudging you towards maybe speaking to some of the ideas you've had about classes that think holistically about the role of food in society and how you feel that kind of education can create a shift in the way people engage with existence almost. So, maybe you can speak to that a little bit collectively until another. Oh, Louise has got a question. Hooray! Good.
Yeah, it's not really a question so much, but it's just a comment. I've just been writing a few notes down on words which have really struck me. And I think two of the things you say at the end, Simon, the problem of disenfranchisement and dysfunctional, and I think those are real big issues, because it sort of depends, because some of us sort of come from sort of a background and a culture where sort of food is a joy, and that's what I think food is something that it is more than just sustaining us and keeping us going, and it should nourish us in all senses of the world. And I was just thinking of that lovely poem that Carmen read out, and all the lovely experience. I think my love affair of food, which is quite unfortunate actually, but my love affair of food sort of comes from my work in the Mediterranean and that lovely food culture there, and how close it is, and families coming together, and I think it's really sad that there has just been a breakdown. And I think it sort of goes back to the 70s, 80s, when not fast food, but frozen food became available, and sort of women trying to move beyond the kitchen and things. And it's and I think for me, this is sort of at the heart of the problem. There's all these other big things about climate change and food systems and food security, but it's that, how do you get people to fall back in love with not just eating, but making stuff together as a group, as a family, and communing together around the making. And that's something that we enjoy at home. So that's I suppose it has turned into a question, but it's more a comment really, just to maybe set the scene going.
Well, if I just comment on that quickly first, and then maybe the others got something. Look, that's at the center of what we do, really. 15 years ago, I made a radio series called The Kids Who Fell in Love with Food. And that really was the reason it was called that, because it was all centered on the premise that you could only get kids to eat differently, to amend their diets, to eat healthier, by changing their relationship with food, and that would happen naturally if they had the same that closer relationship with food. And you know, the word love, I think, is very important in that respect. And we kind of use that approach with everything that we do. Everything that we do is founded on that. Otherwise, you end up like government, and you wouldn't want to end up like government, would you? So, I mean, what government does in this respect is they issue nutritional guidelines, which are the driest, most prescriptive, and often academically ill-informed pieces of legislation. They are, would you believe it? It's legislation about what we should and shouldn't eat, and in particular what kids should and shouldn't eat. Now, if you read those, there's no use of any words like joy, and certainly no use of any words like delicious. Now, where does this lead you? Just interestingly, as one example, it leaves you into Kafkaesque situations where kids will not eat the food in their schools because the nutritional guidelines make it virtually inedible from a taste point of view. That contradiction can't be seen by people in government. I'm just give you a lovely example would be, you know, a conversation with very senior nutritionists in Wales, which goes like this. You won't let them use small amounts of butter, salt, even honey, actually, in some instances, in the school food. Therefore, the stuff that they are cooking from fresh is bland and unpalatable. The answer you get from government is they're eating so much of this bad stuff, particularly salt, in their everyday diets, we can't possibly give them any more. So you reply to them and say, well, but they're not eating it anyway, and then you disappear in, I don't know what you've, those of you that, you know, maybe a philosopher can tell me what you call that, but you just disappear in a puff of illogical whatever. Carwyn and Derry, do you want to contribute something to that?
Just briefly, just one other word. So off the back of this, you know, yeah, falling in love concept, that relationship with food, I think the other word that comes in off the back of that for me, and that joins some of these dots with the curriculum, is confidence. And what I mean by this is, you know, I'm blessed with many good relationships in my life, you know, with friends and family and so on and so forth. And that love, as it were, is built on the foundation of confidence in these people that I have a relationship with. And I think we can say, you know, we could transpose that into food and say, my observation here is when we have people, I could think we go so far as to say when we have cultures that are founded on a bed of confidence in their relationship with food, that creates the context in which the love that actually enables people to, you know, to try new things and so on, that comes from confidence. And there's a lot of people in our context here in Wales, and of course a lot of people globally, that confidence has been, it's not just not been made available to them. The fact that we need to raise generations of children who are given the chance to have confidence in themselves and in their relationship with food, that's been denied to them. I don't know if that's too abstract and philosophical, but yeah, anyway, for me, that's quite important.
That's lovely. Derry, do you want to briefly respond as well? Because we've got some questions piling up. I don't know, yeah, if you can see all of those. So yeah, go ahead.
Louise, was a question of how we get people to fall back in love with food? We'll go for that. Okay.
Yeah, maybe.
So, I mean, what I've noticed with my work is that when I'm cooking just for myself or just for my partner, it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of energy. You have to justify turning the oven on, going shopping, coming up with a recipe, making it taste good, serving it, doing all the washing up, etc. There's a lot involved when it comes to making food, and I find that when there's enough people that come together in community, it makes that task a lot more manageable. And it's just evident from the Cegin Hedyn project that we have about 10 volunteers turn up, from people who just want to wash dishes or just want to serve up food and serve it to people, to people who really want to cook and have an opportunity to try out some of these dishes that they absolutely love at home and are really, really passionate about, and they can cook them for their community. And not only are they just cooking it for their community, they get to eat it with their community too. And so there's all of these things that all fire off together. And the vibe that's in that community centre is just how I thought we would be like all of the time having food, but we're isolating ourselves more and more these days. And the more that we isolate ourselves, the harder it is to cook for ourselves, to motivate ourselves to go out there and cook, because of the immense effort, the immense time, the immense money that it takes when you're just doing it for one or two people. Community really does bring the love back into food, from what I've seen.
Thank you. Elaine, you've got your hand up.
Hello. Yeah, I'll be briefly introduce who I am, what I do very quickly. It will enhance the picture. So, like you guys, I'm a chef as well. I'm also a nursery nurse, and I hold the position of Sustainable Food Engagement Officer for Monmouthshire County Council in Wales. And we are working to action the curriculum with children and young people. So we are working in schools with our teachers, with our young peoples. We've just become the first deforestation climate champions as well. So looking at climate within this, working with our farmers, working with the food system, major corporate producers as well. But my question is, we are blazing a trail forward, which is fantastic. But very often when I look to others, as it were, we're very often teaching and sharing and helping others on their journey. But at the end of the week, it's exhausting, sort of like there's very little backup, you sort of think, oh my God, what am I doing? I know, when I stop and reassess, what am I doing? But what would you suggest? How can we partner together? How can we build an infrastructure and something that, for those that are doing it and doing it well, we can share, but we're still keeping a little bit of that energy to keep stepping forward and not necessarily be dragged, but be able to share and still communicate well, whilst being able to change the system. I see myself as a system agitator, but sometimes feel like a system aggravator. And so sort of finding like-minded individuals without wasting energy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, I think it's actually the question that really we've probably been addressing most over the last sort of 6 to 8 months is, what should we be doing, and how do we go about that strategically? I think that what I mean, I know that you do amazing work in Monmouthshire, and we do need to please get in touch, and we'll have more conversations for sure.
That would be fantastic. Thank you.
Our approach has been to, I suppose, look, I spend quite a lot of time dealing with government. It's very frustrating, as we know. We won't go into the detail of it, but look, it's a worldwide phenomenon. And the way that we've done this is that it's based on the belief, and I think it's increasingly true, that if you're going to get government to do anything, you have to show them how it works, create a parade that they want to be on. And that's what our efforts have been like in Carmarthenshire. So I think I mentioned at the start that we've done things intensively. Well, one of the reasons we've done it intensively is basically we want to show in schools that if you all do this, put it into the curriculum. We have that opportunity in Wales at the moment because obviously we have a new curriculum that allows for it. Put it on the curriculum, do the school lunch thing, do the food leadership. That's the package that every school in Wales had. If it had that, we'd go a long way to addressing the problems that we're talking about. That's why we wanted to do so many kids at scale. So we did 400 primary school kids in the first 4 or 5 months of 2024, for instance. And then, as I say, the reason is to show that government, the way that it can be done. So very crucial in that respect. And I think also there is a room within Wales and globally for a lot more collaboration. Really interested to see the comments from Haughton in Texas there. Carwyn's going to say a little bit to that question. But I think that's basically it, is that none of us want to be putting a lot of effort in and then feeling that, okay, we've affected a few kids' lives, we've made a bit of a difference, but ultimately it's not moving the dial. Because that's the reason that I'm spending less time trying to persuade government to do things, because you discover you put in a huge amount of effort over a long period of time and the dial only moves very slowly. I feel like everything that we're doing ideally would have been done by the state 20 years ago. But personally, I feel the state's not in a condition to be able to do this right now. And that's why we're going out and doing it, and then seeing where we can bring government behind us or independent organizations as well. I hope that helps a little bit.
Thanks, Simon. Do you want to come back on that, Elaine, or are you good? Can we move on to another question?
Yeah, no, that's all good. I will pick up with you though, if that's okay, because that, you know, I said there's some value in that offer. Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, Carwyn or Derry, did you want to come back on anything there? No, you're good. Okay. So Rin, have I pronounced that right? Sorry if I haven't.
You got it.
Okay.
Hi. Great presentation. Thank you. So my background is international nutrition. I studied very early on the intersection of human and environmental health. And so I'm bridging a lot of my experiences to work on a program that is curriculum on climate change, but intersects with food and climate. And so I'm looking from an externalization, not in a school system, because the nature of the curriculum and topics probably won't simply align in a conservative state and country now. So my desire is just kind of understanding the touch points on integrating a curriculum into a school that might have had more resistance than others, or any pushback that was helpful for you to counter, in the sense of how did you articulate the value of intercepting something that is naturally disrupting their environment and food.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that question. It's a really helpful question. I think two important things come to mind that are worth saying. One of them is, you know, we're fortunate in Wales with regard to all of this, in that we have a curriculum context that very much enables this. So that the curriculum, the state curriculum for schools wants you to you know, to join up between subject areas, wants things to be holistic, as it were, to use a big, you know, term, catch-all term. So we do have that, and I'm sure everything that we're doing would be easier in other contexts where the same is true. But that notwithstanding, the direction the curriculum has gone in England, and obviously we have lots of relationships, we're next door to England and blah, 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 blah. The curriculum's gone in the other direction in England, but nevertheless, people have been able to make this sort of thing happen. And there are, you know, examples further along the journey, actually, than some of what we've done, but working in a more difficult context. So it's a bit slower in that sense for them. And I think my reflection on, I think, what Simon was saying, you know, all the lessons here and listening to colleagues and friends over in England is, you know, we, like, kind of putting the actual nitty gritty of the curriculum aside, relationships matter hugely. So we've been massively helped by developing good relationships with smaller state actors. So here there's the county councils, and you can identify sometimes just by pushing a door, seeing if it opens, you know, individuals who hold key positions. And the same is true in schools. You know, actually, the reality around us is that there are some head teachers, and Barney and Simon both alluded to this earlier, there's some head teachers who intuitively kind of see the importance of this, and there are others who don't. But if you can find those early adopters who are open to it, they can usually find ways to work within their structures to make things happen. And then, if you're lucky, you can get into that position where, kind of like what Simon was saying, something good happens, and other people want to emulate it, get on board, they get interested, and so on and so forth. One little thing to add, because I wouldn't want this to be missed, is something I think Barney said, which is the importance of doing things hands-on. I think that's where this is really different. This is not just about kind of intellectual, we've done a presentation because it's online, but if we'd been gathering together, you could bet your bottom dollar, as you guys say, that we would have done it using ingredients and getting us to talk over, working with our hands. And that, I think, is important where you've got maybe more opposition or more difficult context that can bypass some of that stuff. Hopefully.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, Rin, did you want to come back with anything, or are you good?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. I want to push you, though, a little bit, to talk a bit about tier glass and your ideas there, because that's curriculum. You're thinking about schools here, but there's HE education, and I know that you've been thinking in that regard, and I think that that has had some problems, but nevertheless, I think is an inspirational story for other people to maybe think about, or at least know about, because it's a revolutionary understanding of how to, what a subject can do, or what you can do with a subject. Perhaps that's better to say. I'm sorry I'm pushing you, but I am.
Well, look, it's an interesting thing about food, isn't it? I mean, look, it's so fundamental to existence. Yeah, if you look at it in the way that it's considered, it's nearly always considered in a fractured manner, whether that be food prices, health, food security, whatever it might be. And in policy terms, exactly the same thing happens. So instead of having a policy for food, which you think would be, one of the first policies you'd need to have, how are we going to feed people? We don't have that. We have policies for economics and for transport and for agriculture, but they're not connected by any thread about how we should treat food and what the worth of food is. And so I suppose, the approach that we have, as Carwyn outlined with schools, is basically, let's cook, enjoy food, do what you do with food, which is grow it, cook it, eat it, and commune around it. And then the subjects come from that. And that might be a way with Reen, what she's saying, is a way in without having to say, we're going to teach climate change and we're going to use the vehicle of food to do that, which, might be more controversial, or is becoming more controversial in the United States, it seems. But we tried to do, Carwyn and I did a lot of work on doing that at further education and higher education level too, with the same approach. That courses where people would actually be out there, either in with places like dairies, in places like mine, in hospitality, but also with producers, whether that's growing, whether that's cheese makers, etc. So really getting an all-round education on food through, there are no better metaphors than the metaphors of food. So through food, but actually, delving into a huge amount of all those areas that confront us. I mean, one of the things that goes with that, of course, is that there are solutions to our food issues that are multi-solving. And this is what's very frustrating with government, which is, when you look at what we could be doing and what would happen if we had a more localized food system, for instance, and all the benefits would be multiple. And they're just not in one area. They'd be in economy, they'd be in health, they'd be in environment, etc., etc. So that's something that we were very interested in doing, but it's not proceeding at the moment, as far as I know.
Thanks, Simon. Cordula, thanks for waiting so patiently. Bless you.
Thanks, Lucy, and thanks everyone. That was a really inspiring event. I think you are indeed cooking up a storm. Just to give you a bit of background, I'm a research fellow at the Trinity Centre for Environmental Humanities in Trinity Centre in Trinity College, Dublin, and I do work with Lucy and Louise. And in a previous project, I was lucky enough to have a hands-on project, which was brilliant. I looked into historical recipes for seafood. First of all, because we're in Ireland, and Ireland is an island nation, and most people forget that we have over 7,000 kilometers of coastline, and the sea is all around us. So I wanted to dig into the identity, like into the roots of the Irish culture and heritage by looking into these recipes, but also seeing how what we can learn from that in terms of sustainability when it comes to fish and seafood. In the olden days, I'll just call it olden days now, obviously they had a much, I'd say, healthier means of approaching cooking, right? They ate the whole fish and the eyes and the cheeks and everything else, and now we are just eating fillets. Do you think, or how important do you think that aspect is for people to engage and find that food identity, maybe? And how, would it help to have that sustainability aspect in that as well? And I think, Cowan, you already touched a bit on that, historical or roots that Wales identifies with, and I think personally it's quite important. But what are your opinions? And do you cook historical recipes in dairy in your kitchen?
Loads of great questions there.
Thank you.
Shall I say something on which bits did it feel like I should say something on there? Somebody else say something. I'll remember what I was going to say. There was a bit of it that felt like it was for me, and it's just gone from my head which bit it was.
Derry?
Can you be a bit more specific on my kind of area? What kind of specific?
So maybe a direct question for you would be: do you cook historical recipes in your kitchen, in your community kitchen, and do you make people aware that this is a really old recipe, or it roots from this area, or like, to give them context?
We do like ancient processes. We're doing ferments, and we're doing pickles and things like that. We don't really educate the people that are coming to the kitchen. We the idea of the seed kitchen, it was always about kind of like, we'll do it, and if you're interested in it, come and ask us. Not necessarily about putting all that information out there for people. It was more, it's there, come and ask us what we're doing. As regards the other food that we do at Cegin Hedyn, sometimes the desserts, we will do traditional desserts. We might have some traditional Welsh desserts and things, but our main thing that we do on a Tuesdays is a curry, and we use then local ingredients to make that. And then on our Thursdays, we do sometimes play up the recipes a little bit, but we try and keep it to quite consistent recipes that people are familiar with and like, and can come back for, and not be surprised by something new.
I think that touches on the thing I've remembered I wanted to say, which is, you were talking about fish and sustainability and using the whole fish, and using, to give a picture here in this context, I give talks on kind of food history of Wales, or the history of specific, apples or whatever, other bits of food here. And I'm always getting people coming to me, still now in the 2020s, who say, who grew up in the 50s and 60s in rural parts of this country Wales that still didn't have electricity, as late as the mid to late 60s, many places. So we've still got that generation with us for now. And people coming up to me saying, "Oh yeah, do you know when I was growing up, we would, regularly, an old man from Anglesey a few months ago coming up, oh yeah, we would regularly be sent down to the beach to pick limpets to cook." They're not particularly appetizing, not particularly easy to, but it was part, and they knew what to do with it, and all this sort of thing. And that's true across so many different food areas, as you allude to. And kind of behind that is you can look at that with a sustainability lens, and that's really important, and the same will be true of offal. But the actual lived experience, particularly with a child, but it is obviously true with adults as well, is the yuck factor. And it's not just the yuck factor. We mustn't simplify this either. It's also unfamiliarity. It's this whole concept of culturally appropriate foods and all this sort of thing. That's a really variegated landscape now. That I could take you to places near us and introduce you to people, younger people who have never tasted curries. While I could also take you half an hour from here and introduce you to other younger people who have never eaten traditional Welsh foods in any sense, however we define that. The landscape is so varied, and I don't think that's just true here. So I think that's, for me, that's a really important factor. How, rather than tell people didactically, and I'm not suggesting that you're suggesting this, Cordelia, but just reflecting on your reflections, rather than tell people, there are bones, there are eyes, and we need to use these things, and this is how you do it. Actually getting at that by other means, that for me, it's the power of storytelling and saying, actually, this is what, in our case, maybe our ancestors did, or this is what this people group did. Let's explore that together. Let's see what experiences we have of cooking this up, and how can we make it tasty, but giving an introduction to say, this is not crazy, wild, yucky, and it expands the bounds in people's heads of what's plausible. So we did that. I'll shut up after this, but I talked about leeks at my first slide, and I was involved in a project about a year ago with younger kids in a difficult estate in Wales, and we got them acting the story of St. David, who's the national patron saint, and there's things about leeks, so the national vegetable, in his story. But because they'd done a play, and because they'd acted, and because they'd learned all about it, even though for many of them they'd never tasted a leek before, they were actually, excited would be an exaggeration, but curious after acting it and learning all about it. They were curious about what leeks are like, and what they're like when you cook them this way, and all that stuff, which they wouldn't have been if we just introduced them with leeks.
Yeah, there's just one thing I'd like to say, which is that, we're seeing obviously a lot of primary school children and secondaries. And when we started on a lot of this work about 18 months ago, I think one of my first impressions was shock at how much the situation had deteriorated since I'd been going into schools, which was about 15 years before that. So there'd been a long gap. You would have hoped things would have improved, but they clearly hadn't. And the two areas were really the quality of school food had deteriorated even further. But the other thing that was really noticeable was that so many children had no vocabulary around food other than the vocabulary of fast food. And, literally we'd be in situations where you're giving an 8-year-old some apple, and they're comparing it to a French fry, because they just don't have many reference points, because they're eating a lot of very artificial food, the most ultra processed, whether that be things like fruit shoots, or whether it's chicken nuggets is extremely popular with kids, as we know, pizzas, very poor quality pizzas, etc., etc. So that colonization of the vocabulary by McDonald's in particular, I think, I found very, very shocking. But from another point of view, I think it put us on this thread of actually, this is not, that is not, the approach is not to tell them not to do that. This is what they're talking about there is at a different place from what we're talking about. And we're going to take them home to something that's very fundamental. And that's why we had all the belief that they would make that connection. And the relationship would change, but it's a very different relationship to the one that they have with McDonald's.
Thanks, Simon. I think we're going to need to draw to a close. Other people are probably going off to other events in the festival too. So can I just say thank you to everyone? And I'm sure, you know, you've really stimulated everybody's thinking. The Community Kitchen project is a fantastic venture for the community. And equally, cooking in schools and empowering kids to understand that they have some kind of agency over their own, or what goes into their bodies, let's put it like that, it is enormously important. And I think what I'd like to do is ask you a question, just to everyone generally, not one that needs to be answered, but what kind of society or world would we live in which cooking was on the curriculum in a holistic sense, understanding to increase the population's understanding of their relationship to the environment, and those connections to each other that comes through the ability to feed and to care for one another. I think that's a very interesting thought experiment for everybody to do. That's the revolution that you guys are actively engaged with. That is enormously commendable, and yeah, I think it will be a very different world. So thank you for coming, everybody. Thank you for your questions. Simon and Derry, I'm sure you can see in the chat the amount of enthusiasm, and yeah, if anyone's in Carmarthen, obviously you've got to go to Cegin Hedyn and check out Simon at Cegin y Bobl's website if you feel like you'd like to donate to what they're doing. So if you want to look at this recording later for the fun of it, it will be on the UNESCO-MOST Bridges YouTube page, which you can also find through our website. Just type in UNESCO-MOST Bridges, but I think it will also be on the LPI list of videos in their YouTube channel as part of the festival. So thank you very much, everyone. Eat well, be merry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm the Deputy Executive Director of the UNESCO-MOST Bridges Global Coalition, which is the only humanities-informed sustainability science programme in the family of UN organisations. And Bridges has co-created this event in partnership with two Welsh charities, Cegin y Bobl and Cegin Hedyn. Cegin is a Welsh word that means kitchen. I'm assuming we have an international audience here. So